Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Enter the Chinese Market Through Cross-Border E-Commerce. My name is Zhao Li, and I will be your host in this webinar, and I'm also the co-founder of Crayfish.io. Before I hand the mic over to Phil, today's speaker, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this presentation. The presentation will be around 40 minutes, and there will be a 5-minute Q&A session afterwards. Today's webinar will be available after the live session, and it will be published on our YouTube channel, which the video link will be sent to you through email shortly after the webinar. Also, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have any question for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the Q&A tab, which you can see on the panel at the bottom of your screen. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session, and if we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. And last, we'd like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social networks. If you enjoy this webinar, please share your thoughts on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. And also remember to follow us. We are going to share some useful insights as well. Remember to tag us and give us a shout. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you today's speaker. So Phil May is the Prestige Director, Strategy, M&A, and China in Unilever. He is a strategy director at Unilever Prestige, the premium beauty division on the Unilever Group. He oversees multiple prestige beauty brands such as Dermalogical, Murad, Hourglass, and Tatcha. And he also leads the business development for those brands in China. So he's going to talk about how, as a small brand or as a foreign brand, can enter the Chinese market through cross-border e-commerce. Phil, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jiao and the Crayfish team. And it's my pleasure to talk with the participants today and the people who listen to the webinar. And so the objective for today's webinar is really to give you a bit of taste on how foreign brands can potentially enter the Chinese market through cross-border e-commerce. And if we go to the next page, please, that obviously Chinese market is a, next page, please. Okay. Obviously, you all know that China is a massive market globally. It's going to be the biggest economy in the world, and it's already the biggest e-commerce market globally, and it's going to be continue to exceed the average kind of growth rate globally. So, which means the market potential is just going to be bigger and bigger. Next page, please. On the other hand, that well, for most of the foreign brands, that China market looks extremely attractive to them. It also represents several key challenges that when a brand tries to enter a China market, particularly through the traditional way, what we call the domestic trade approach. And that involves a relatively very long registration time that depends on the product category. It can take from, like, say, 12 months time, sometimes up to 2 years to get the certificate from the Chinese authority to allow you to trade the products. And in some categories that China operates with very specific testing rules, which becomes a barrier for some foreign brands to enter China. For example, in the cosmetics industry, animal testing is a mandatory requirement for any imported cosmetic product. And this is against some of the brands' belief that for foreign brands who kind of claims on a cruelty-free basis. And another challenge is obviously the cost to operate, that to set up a fully in-house China operation, it means you need to set up a new Chinese companies, you need to have your finance, legal entity, supply chain system set up, which often end up with essentially the China part of business becomes a red printer that it becomes a loss making for your business despite the massive volume you're getting. And then it's really around the tax structure that depends on the category your product are operated in, that China tends to have relatively high tax structure compared with markets like US, where, for example, the consumption tax tends to be around 9 to 10%, or in the UK, you have the VAT around like 15%, and it's tax deductible. And well, in China, that the domestic trade sometimes can tax you up to like 30, 40%, which makes the business quite difficult to operate. With all those challenges, the good news is since around 5 years ago, that China opens up a new way of doing business, what they call the cross-border e-commerce, which is supported by the Chinese government, essentially to fulfill the Chinese consumers' product needs by shipping directly products outside China into Chinese consumers' home through e-commerce platform. That brings quite a lot of benefit for the business outside China. That's especially in terms of you don't need to do the product registration, which allows you to enter the Chinese market much faster. And there's much less additional regulatory requirement because essentially you ship the product under the foreign rules and send the individual parcels directly to Chinese consumers' home. You just need to pay the platform fee to platform like Tmall Global, and then you pay the import tax, that the cross-border tax, which tends to be around 20%, and then you have a relatively easy fulfillment route through your warehouse in Hong Kong or free trade zone in China. So that really gives the foreign brands the opportunity to enter China faster with a relatively low cost and complexity. Next page, please. This channel at the moment, that is still a relatively small channel, which represents probably between 2% to 5% of the total e-commerce market size in China, depends on the product category. But it also already gives you a pretty good consumer penetration. Actually, if you look at the online shoppers, more than 15% of the consumer are already using the cross-border e-commerce as a channel to do their shopping. And because of the size of the Chinese market, we're literally talking about almost 100 million people using cross-border e-commerce as their shopping channel, which offers a massive opportunity for your brand to win in China. Next page, please. So this new way of doing business, what they call the cross-border e-commerce, started as a pilot by the Chinese government in very selective cities, and you can see with the success and high growth rate that we're seeing in this channel, the Chinese government also is expanding massively on the pilot cities. So actually by now that cross-border e-commerce can pretty much fulfill into almost all the major cities and provinces in China, which allows you to reach almost all the consumers in China. Next page, please. So today, that in this webinar, that I'm not going to get into the details about the day-to-day operation of the cross-border e-commerce, but just to give you a flavor of some of the basic rules of some of the tips that for you to think about how to win if you're interested in this specific channel and to sell your products to Chinese consumer. So here are kind of the five kind of tips that I want to share today, and I will go one by one. Next page, please. The first one is really about choosing the right channel. If we go to the next page, that the cross-border e-commerce channel, that is a relatively fragmented channel. It's not like the domestic e-commerce channel that everyone knows about Taobao and Tmall, and to say, let's just go there. And the cross-border e-commerce, you have a range of different players and essentially playing quite different roles. You have like Cola or VIP, those are like more like B2B channels. You have Tmall Global, which is kind of the cross-border platforms under Tmall. You have Little Red Book, some of you may be aware, it's a big social media channel in China, but also offering e-commerce. I think the key tips here is that you need to have a proper channel strategy, that when you think about it, you would never be able to all of a sudden enter like say 10 channels all at the same time. And what you can think about is to say, what are the channels I want to play and what is the role of each channel in my portfolio strategy or the channel strategy. For example, the Tmall Global, they are more similar to direct to consumer, your brand.com site, which is relatively more complex to set up, but it also gives you a good control of your brand look and feel, allow you to control the imagery of the brand, allow you to decide what is the right price to sell to the products. And then you have other channels, what we call the B2B channels, like Hola, like VIP. Those channels have, because they manage more under like B2B channels, it's very easy to enter. You just sell your product at a trade margin to those retailers. But the challenge for you will be, those are more volume-driven channels, not necessarily help you to build the long-term brand equity. And then you have channel like Little Red Book. They're really great for awareness building because they are super strong in terms of the social media presence. People check reviews, people look at how others feel about the product. But in general, those platforms, they are not particularly strong on e-commerce transaction. So you may have a presence which helps you to build brand awareness and brand imagery. At the same time, your presence may not directly link back to sales. Next page, please. The second point I want to talk about is really around finding the right local partners to collaborate with you, that when you enter the cross-border e-commerce space. And here I want to introduce a concept called TP, the Tmall partner. For some of you are familiar with the Alibaba platform, you may have heard about the TP. That TP is a party that provides kind of the Tmall merchants with high quality and transparent one-step solutions to your Tmall services. I think the official definition seems to be quite complex. If you think a different way, that the selling into a platform like Tmall, it's very different from selling into a retailer like Amazon or getting into a supermarket, because Amazon or supermarket, they essentially purchase your goods and resell to the consumer, and they look after all the merchandising of your products. Well, Alibaba or Tmall is essentially just a platform, and they think Alibaba more like a shopping mall, that they lend you the space and they say you can sell your products here. But if you are in a shopping mall, you get the space, you still need someone to decorate your store, you still need the people, your beauty advisor or some advisors to talk to the consumer when they have questions. You still need to decide what is the right kind of shelf panograph. You need someone who collects the money for you when you sell the products. And those are the things that are not really covered by Tmall platform themselves. All they do is they charge you like 5% platform fee, and then they let you to manage the store space yourself. And that's why having the right local partner, or what do they call the TP, is super, super critical, because they are the one that, like a third-party companies that is based in China, that they will help you to work on things like decorating the stores, design the store page, arranging the customer services, link your Alipay account to the Tmall platform, making sure the accounting is in place so that you can collect your monies. So they are really, really important for us to win that in this space. And to find the right TPs, that you can always work with the Alibaba platform yourself, or just reach out to your industry to find some relevant TPs in the market. And you can potentially work on service agreement, which means they charge you normally either at a fixed fee or at a percentage of your retail sales as a commission, or some TPs may even work on distribution agreement, which means you can even sell the product to them, and they can take it from there and sell the products on behalf of you. Next page, please. Yeah, the third point I want to share is really around how do you manage this channel, or how do you build your product services around it. Next page, please. If you think about the Alibaba as a website, that's the one caveat or one thing people keep falling into is that because if you come from a Western lens and from a foreign brand perspective, the closest kind of company that you would compare Alibaba with is most likely Amazon. And Amazon by default, that you then think it is more like an e-commerce company. But the thing is, in China, actually Alibaba platform is more like an ecosystem, which touches every single Chinese internet users. They have a online shopper penetration now about like 90%, and it actually covers almost every single activities in day-to-day Chinese consumers' life, which means if you think about it, they are the Chinese Amazon, they are probably the Chinese eBay, which covers Taobao. They own the key social platform like Weibo, which covers like the foreign version of the Facebook or the Twitters. They have big investment in Chinese version of their video website, essentially the Chinese YouTube. They produce films, and they provide like a financial services, banking services, credit services. So from that perspective, for you to win in this channel, to build your business there, you have to think Alibaba platform as an ecosystem that spans across all those consumer touchpoints and build your strategy across it. So it's really around not just what is your commercial strategy or the transactional strategy, but also have you leveraged the Alibaba platform, for example, to use their live streaming services or use their social media services to do your marketing campaign or drive awareness. Those is really critical for you to win in Chinese cross-border market landscape. Next page, please. Okay, so moving on, the fourth tip I want to share is around the IP protection. So I think you probably have seen some of the news that talking about the challenges for business to operate in China in terms of the intellectual property space. The good news is that the Chinese government, as well as most of the Chinese companies like Alibaba groups, they really put the intellectual property as one of the key priorities that in terms of their overall strategy. And you can see a very big major change in terms of how they tackle things like counterfeit products, things like intellectual property infringement. They really help you to address those. Nevertheless, it is still a big challenge, and particularly with the overall Chinese law arrangement around the IP. If you go to the next page, the thing is, for you to operate in the cross-border e-commerce platform, that the basic trademark requirement is pretty simple. That it normally only requires you to have the trademark certificate in your original country in the relevant classes that based on your products against the IP classification. That but the thing is, imagine if your brand is named, let's say ABC, and you hold the trademark that code ABC in UK, and now you have set up a cross-border e-commerce site in China called ABC Tmall stores. And if you are not protected on your IP in China, in mainland China, of your name, of your logo, of your potential even Chinese name, what may happen is that someone else may register your name in the mainland China part, and very likely that they will have the right to secure the trademark because you are actually not officially trading in the market yet. And even sometimes if you ask the authority to protect your trademark, you may still be exposed because sometimes you still, whoever registers the trademark of your name are selling authentic products. So therefore, it won't be very easy for you to protect your IP from there. So therefore, my recommendation for you to think about is before you even enter the Chinese market, making sure that you have the right trademark registration in place, both in English characters as well as in Chinese characters, and making sure that every single authorization letter that you have provided to third party is properly vetted. And also at the end, there's a specific IP protection mechanism on Alibaba platform that can help you to address any IP infringement that if you encounter so. Next page, please. Okay, so finally, the last tip that I want to share is really around building the awareness. If you go to the next page, ultimately, why a brand wants to sell to Chinese market is because the market potential, the opportunity for the brand to generate incremental sales. And what's interesting, especially if you are not based in China, if you're now in UK, in London, you go to Harrods, go to Selfridges, you actually see quite a lot of Chinese tourists that queuing up in some key, maybe luxury counters to buy the products they like. And that linked with the single most important thing for you to think about when you try to enter the Chinese market, that setting up a storefront is probably the easiest part of the work for your whole strategy. That ultimately is around how do I make sure Chinese consumers are willing to buy my products. If you think about it, ultimately, the people who are queuing up in Harrods or in Selfridges, the Chinese consumer will want to travel even abroad, pay the premium, draw up the queue to get the brands they love. But the key is to say, how do you build the brand love first, even before your physical availability and the store expansion? Imagine if today no one actually heard about you, and then all of a sudden that we say, here is a Tmall flagship store of your brand, then who's going to buy from you? Why consumer that with like the billions of the choices of the product will enter your storefront and browse your store? That's really the key thing, even becomes more important before you set up your own cross-border e-commerce store. Next page, please. And that's why we have seen cases that some brands actually struggled when they enter Chinese market too fast without the pre-awareness. And I'm just taking some of the examples here that from the beauty industry, that you have brands called like Algenist, Strivectin, that they are quite famous in the US actually, but not necessarily they are very famous in China and have the right awareness with the Chinese consumer. And their strategy is to say, okay, now Chinese market is really attractive. I want to enter China. So they entered the Chinese market through like Sephora, through Tmall, They opened many doors. But if you look at the sales numbers, it's actually very, very low because they don't have the awareness yet, but they open the storefront too quickly. On the other hand, you all know the brand Lush, right? And very popular in the UK as well. And Lush actually didn't really open any Chinese presence for a long time. Also, this is linked with the fact that they are against animal testing, so their channel choices is very limited. But they actually, even before enter China market, they have adopted quite a bit kind of a Chinese marketing strategy. They invested into Chinese social media and they built the brand awareness. I mean, some of you probably know, like the Solid shampoo bar in the red color, which is called the Little Red Hat in China. It's super popular even before the brand is even available in China. And then they opened up the Tmall global store. And by doing so, that it really triggers an immediate large volume boost that since the launch of the product. And that turned into a very healthy, positive cycle. And the more awareness you have, the more people buy you and people talk about you, and generally more volume and the people will return purchase. And that helps you in the store ranking in Tmall as well. So that's why I think, well, we talked quite a bit today around how do you set up the cross-border e-commerce. I do want to end the sharing part with the fact that if you're really interested in landing your brand in Chinese market and among Chinese consumer, just making sure that think awareness first in terms of how do we make the Chinese consumer love your brand, love your product, before getting into the channel and operational details. Then I think that's the key part that for my webinar today. And then I will move on to the next page and open for some questions from the participants.
Cool. Thanks very much, Phil. Very insightful sharing session indeed. Guys, we are now open for questions. You can now ask questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. While you guys are asking questions, I'm going to do a quick introduction of what Crayfish does and who we are. So what we do is we are a full service provider for better engagement with China, powered by technology. The services that we offer are in 3 pillars. The first one is called expertise. It's everything related when you want to enter China, from executional level and also from industry level as well. It includes basic market insights research, translation, IP strategy, as Phil just mentioned, which is very important. And also we offer sales and marketing services as well. The second batch of services that we offer is called connections. This includes partner introduction, government relationship, meeting arrangement. So when Phil talked about the TP related topics, if we are going to offer you the services, it will fall under the connection part. The third part is called capital. So we run a separate program called Crayfish Accelerator Program, which aims at helping European tech startups to do business with China as well. So in terms of our e-commerce services, we cover almost everything that when it comes to doing business with China through cross-border e-commerce. It includes market research to find out if your product is right for Chinese market. We can do this in focus group or just basic desktop research depending on your budget. We can also help you find the right Chinese name and trademark both of your Chinese name and English names. We work with very well-known Chinese lawyers who are specializing in this area, and we recently just helped several clients to register more than 15 trademarks in China. And the third one is we can help you set up your social media channels in China. Phil just mentioned that it's very important to build your awareness first before you decide to actually open your storefront in China. I think social media in China now is acting the very important or almost a vital part in your brand building, brand awareness building practices. So it's very important that you own your own social media channels, which you can talk to your followers and your audiences directly. And the fourth one is that we can help you create your landing pages and also your marketing strategies, marketing materials as well, help you define your social media and content strategy, and also we can help you with your partnership introduction and negotiation. We have helped several clients of ours to find the right TP to work with in various models, as Phil just mentioned. So in terms of how we deliver our services, we have 3 different ways of delivering services. The first one is quite popular with basic or small projects, which is our marketplace. On this marketplace, we have more than 1,1200 freelancers and providers located in 16 countries around the globe. All of them can speak both English and Chinese, and they have expertise in various industries. What you need to do is to register as our client using our platform, and then you can post the project out directly. You will receive the several bids from our vetted freelancers and providers. If you are happy with any of those bids, you can simply accept it, and then you can start working from there. This is quite popular with SMEs of our clients, and also it's quite popular for projects like translation, setting up your social media account, that type of projects. And we also offer a fixed price package. If you go to our website, you will see the fixed price packages. They are quite like e-commerce service platform where you can select the package that you want to buy directly, and our service providers will deliver against the package itself. So for example, we are now offering setting up your WeChat official account with a very competitive price where you can just purchase directly, and it's very easy for you to go through the e-commerce process as well. The last one is what we call enterprise favorite, which is tailored services. This service is a little bit like traditional consulting project where we operate as your consulting or your internal, your external procurement team to help you select the providers that will work with you, and also the project scope. And we will also give you a project manager for clients with over 6 months engagement. So this is our services in a nutshell. And let's see if we have received questions. Yes, due to the time limit, I think we can take 2 to 3 questions today. So Phil, the first question is, should the business register for normal trade as well if they already have cross-border e-commerce business?
Okay, so thank you, Jill. It's a really good question. And I would say the simple answer is yes. And why it is still important, even if you have the cross-border e-commerce, to still register for the domestic trade, is really because there are still some limits on the cross-border e-commerce part. So number one is in terms of there are certain limitations due to logistics, that there will be some specific product category that you won't be able to ship that is from the cross-border warehouse, that because you need to pass through the customs. The second one is really around the speed of delivery and the customer experience. And due to the nature of the cross-border e-commerce, we're talking about product shipping outside China into Chinese consumers' home. While the delivery speed has increased quite dramatically, we're still talking about several days rather than like in 1 or 2 days for the domestic trade, which means the consumer experience is less ideal versus the domestic trade. And finally, the overall, in some of the categories, the tax structure will be more preferential for domestic trade. So therefore, I would say yes, you will be better off if you do both.
Great, great. Second question, do I need a Chinese speaker to operate the business?
Yeah, I think the question is probably yes and no, that it's definitely a plus if you have a Chinese speaker in your team, so that you have some insider knowledge and you have someone who actually can open up Alibaba platforms yourself and check how your brand is performing on the platform. On the other hand, that most of the TPs or like Jill mentioned, like Crayfish, that you have the third parties that will be able to help you on the language challenges. I think it's more of a choice in terms of how much insider information you need for your day-to-day business.
Great. I think we are going to take a last question, and I think it's this is more for a discussion as well. So, Phil, I just received a question from the audience. They are asking, with limited budget as a small brand in the UK or as a niche brand in the UK, how do you build your brand awareness in China? And how much investment do you think it will cost for us?
Yeah, it is a really good question. And indeed, that is the constant challenge we face for all the brands, that how much I should invest into the market. I think the answer is twofold. That one is, if we are a niche brand and we have very limited budget, by default, we have to take a different approach versus those big companies. And that's why, for example, in some of my day-to-day business, we don't, well, our competitors, for example, invest in like mass media. We actually don't invest in any mass media, because if we only operate in more limited channel and with the relatively lower awareness, by competing head-to-head with our big competitors, our return on marketing investment will just be much lower. And what works actually really well is to look at a much more targeted marketing approach. And specifically, for example, have you looked at the Chinese outside China? Have you looked at the what we call like daigous who actually buy products outside China that and ship in China? From our experience, those channels sometimes actually give you a much higher returns for niche brand, because that is a lot more effective than you go into the mass Chinese media, and where the investment will be super, super high. And as a general rule, I would say, if you expect China to be your profit driver, that's probably a little bit stretch. That because at the very beginning you still have the setup fee, you have the tax, but I would say you shouldn't expect like a huge loss making, probably like a break even-ish, to build the early stage awareness in the business. But if you need to go fast, then you can always look at the big celebrity type of social media investment. A big influencer in China like Austin Lee, one slot for a live streaming will cost you around 1 million Chinese yuan, which is around like 100,000 pounds. It gives you an immediate boost on the awareness, but it does cost a lot of money.
Yeah, since you mentioned the KOL, it's a question from myself, because based on my understanding, there was a discussion, I think 1 to 2 months ago in China, in marketing area, about if KOL, key opinion leader, is as effective as it was before. And also there is new concept, it's called key opinion consumer, which is far much niche, much more niche KOL compared to the key opinion leaders. So as a prestige brand or as a very niche brand, what's your view on KOL strategy for those brands?
Yeah, I think, Joe, that's a really good question. And indeed, we have been discussing not just for China market, but also for the US and global market, that shift and how the influencer landscape has evolved in the past couple of years. I would say on one side, the key opinion leaders of those big names that will still play a very important role because of the massive amount of the followings, which of the time gives you a relatively fast boost on the general brand awareness. But the thing is, say, a big KOL, they probably in China recommend 20 brands every day. Then why consumer should remember you, and why people should believe this brand they recommend is unique versus the other 19 brands they recommend on the same day. And that's where the what you call like key opinion consumers, or in the Western world what we call the micro influencers, start to play a much more important role in terms of, because ultimately it is those people you probably know, or those people maybe only have like 10,000 or 20,000 followers, are the people you feel like they are much more trustworthy and much more authentic in terms of their point of view, because you feel like you have a personal relationship with them. And if they give their recommendation, you feel like they give them from their heart rather than they just taking a big check bill. And that's why I think eventually you have to adopt kind of a market strategy that covers both, that probably more the key opinion leader to give you the more generic big awareness, but it is the macro influencers, or what you call the key opinion consumers, that provides you the long-term sustainable brand love.
Yes, I think that's a really great answer, Phil. And I couldn't agree with you more. So guys, it's I think it will be the end of this session. So thank you, Phil. Really brilliant answers, and thank you everyone who joined us for today's webinar. And I want to thank you again, Phil, for sharing your insight and expertise with us today. If you have any additional questions, or if you would like to connect directly with myself and the Crayfish team, you can either reach out directly using the contact information on this slide, or you can reach out via Twitter or LinkedIn. And we are also on Facebook. Thank you for your time today, and I hope to see you in our next webinar. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.